County Executive Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, March 13th. And Mr. Jacinto, if you would call roll, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. White,
Here.
Dr. Glenn, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Glenn. We'll be running a little bit late in regards to jury duty. So we will see her once she gets here and recognize her. So we will be, we have our agenda that's here present with us, and we would need approval of the agenda.
I will move the approval of the agenda.
You'll second.
Okay, second, all right. Okay, so the agenda has been approved, and do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
No public comment. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so next on the agenda item, we have revised proposed CSC Leon staffing structure. And were you going to?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
so the committee received the revised staffing structure. So in your packet on page 3, you'll see a proposed org chart. So proposing adding 3 positions, 2 program and quality assurance specialists, and 1 community relations, or rather it's community engagement and outreach coordinator. On the second page, it's just our job descriptions. That would be page 4. You guys have already seen this. When you get to page 5, that is the job descriptions of the proposed positions. And before we get to the actual fiscal impact, you have a handout. It's colorful, and it's to show you what is planned for this year. The quantity of the programming, as much as we could figure that out, and then the team members who would have oversight of that programming, to give you an idea of what we'd be looking at for the rest of this year and as we go into next fiscal year. So at the top, that's our fiscal piece, our ad valorem, our total budget, and for program services, the council approved 10.7 million, so approximately 85 and some change % of our budget. So currently, with the strategies that are either in play or that will be coming before the council, you'll see the categories on the left. So under high quality early learning, we've got the on-ramp program that the council approved. That will go initially from May to September. That's a sole source, and the oversight is the DFO. Then we have quality early learning plus. And what that means is we expect that we'll at least have 1 more early learning program, if not 2, that will come after the program committee finalizes the strategic framework next month. It could be multiple programs, or it could be an extension of the program that's already in place. And the oversight of that would be the DFO continuing in her role, as well as the program and quality assurance specialist, if approved. As delineated in the position description, which we talked about last month, that program quality assurance specialist would be getting into whatever those programs are, working with the provider to ensure not only are we getting the information we need, but that the reporting, the quality assurance, and all of that is in place. Under family supports, there are 5 strategies there. So the Family Resource Center, we're looking at having that contract in place August 2023. It would be a single provider, although we are doing an ITN to figure out who that will be. The oversight for that would be the DFO and the ED, because that's a pretty big piece. Family strengthening and parent engagement, again, August 2023. We expect to have multiple programs that we would engage, and the program quality assurance specialist would have direct oversight. Same thing for mentoring, 2023 August, one of the PQA specialists. Then when we get to behavioral health and childcare, those are to be determined. We expect there'll be multiple strategies, but as was discussed when we approved the family support strategic framework, we are in communications not only with the city, but with mental health providers, and childcare providers to determine what the best way is to go for behavioral health and a non-traditional childcare. So for behavioral health, we haven't determined, at least I haven't determined who would oversee that, But for non-traditional childcare, that would be the ED and probably one of the program quality assurance specialists. Summer Bridge, you know, we already have summer learning and summer feeding that are out on the street. Those will start contracting May of this year. We expect to do multiple programs, and we would have a program specialist overseeing both of those. Prenatal, we're looking at fall 2023 to begin that process. We expect there will be multiple programs, and that will fall under a PQA specialist. Homelessness is to be determined. We haven't gone through that framework yet. And so that would be to be determined. Then youth development, we're looking at apprenticeships and then a CSC team board. We're looking at fall 2023 and then summer 2023, multiple programs. CSC Leon would be administering the team board or the advisory board with a specialist looking at the apprenticeships and with our community engagement and outreach coordinator and a specialist overseeing the team board. The idea is that the team board would help feed into the apprenticeships, college and career ready. So they would be a feeder into that to help us use our data as well as other information on how we inform a RFQ or RFP for that. And then we have coming to the program committee at their next meeting in April, what we're calling rolling small grants. We're hoping to initiate those this April, and we'd have a program specialist that would be responsible for that. Those applications would open every quarter, and then we would be reviewing the funded programs, of course, every quarter for their compliance. And then under support, you'll see capacity building. Right now, that's the special programs manager as well as the DFO. We've got our SAMIS, which is data. So that's our special program manager. Needs assessment whenever we get there. We will not be doing that anytime soon, but it would be our program accountability, our community engagement, and the ED. Then our funding program evaluations. And that goes to all of these programs to ensure that we are evaluating their efficacy and their effectiveness. That is primarily the program accountability and research manager with support from the DFO and the ED. And then of course, program staffing, which falls under my purview as well as our DFO. So I wanted to try to give you an idea of what we're looking at as far as our programming. We know that the family support services, there are 3 that have been approved and we're moving in that direction with those. And we know that summer learning and summer feeding are in process. So those will be coming in very soon. So that is what this document is for. And so with that, I'm sure there are questions and I'd be happy to answer those.
I have a question. Mr. Watson. So Sika, I looked, I've been trying to keep up with words and and that's what they are to me. I know to you all who do this every day, those words mean something, but it just seems like so many words. And I think to myself, when it comes to staffing, when it comes to spending money, that doesn't make it right into a program. I think let me pause. During the summertime last year, I was very clear that I realized that not every single program we would fund would be a home run, just because of the speed in which we went to market, because it's the first time we're doing it, we're bound to make mistakes. And I was 100% okay with that because we were putting money into programs that were a direct service to kids. When I look at a request for a district to come up, I couldn't figure out why I was really struggling with this so much. One, the original one I thought was, I just thought it was outrageous. I thought there's no reason we need that much staff. But this is obviously trimmed down pretty dramatically. And I thought, okay, I think we're making progress here. Let me try to get into the mindset of someone who brought this forward. And here's kind of where my question is heading. It was important that I prefaced it this way. I don't know what you're doing now. And I'm not saying that you're not doing a lot, but I'm in making a decision for additional resources. I say to myself, well, it would be easier if I knew what's happening now. And I know in terms of getting things set up and getting things going, I'm familiar with that. So if I knew what was going on now, I better understood sort of how you spend your time and how the others spend their time, it would be much easier for me to understand the need for others. Again, going back to my comment about words. And I can read, so when you go through that, you just keep talking about it. So it's just a whole bunch of stuff coming at me. And I know it makes sense to you. And I'm sure to Jacinta and Dina as well, and maybe to Mr. Watts, it's just too much for me. I'm like, how? It's too many words. I'm just trying to get a feel for when I voted for the Children's Services Council, when I advocated for it, here's what I envisioned. What I envisioned was that the taxpayers were dedicating a certain amount of money every year to provide services to fill gaps, needs in our community. And that what we would do is, one, do a needs assessment, figure out what those gaps were that needed to be filled. Two, receive requests for how to fill those gaps in the community and make a determination as to how we were going to take a limited amount of money and fund those. And three, to evaluate. If they promised us 5 widgets, did they give us 5 widgets? If they promised us those 5 widgets would increase their learning, increase whatever it is, evaluate it. Were we able to do it? Those that did, and we showed great promise, or the program showed great promise, we would continue to fund them. Those that didn't, we would either offer assistance to help them get back on track, or peel them off and give someone else an opportunity to show that they were making a difference. But we're only talking about $7 million a year. Maybe it goes up to 8 million, 9 million. It's not that much money. And so every time I started getting phone calls, and I figured out why I was getting phone calls. It wasn't texted to me till later this afternoon. But I started getting phone calls from people who were like, what are you guys doing over there? I don't know. I have no idea. So help me understand, not what this piece of paper says in terms of, talking about this program, this date. I can follow along. Talk about the resources you currently have. How are they being utilized? We have no programs, none at all. 0 programs right now that we're funding. So what are we doing with the resources we currently have?
So in order to, in my mind, understanding what you said, and that sounds like a really simple way of putting it, but there's ways that all of those procurements have to be researched and written. We do that every day. I am constantly meeting with not only stakeholders, but the city and the county to see how we best can work together. That's something we're supposed to be doing as well. We're working with the capacity builders on all of the people that are going to apply for these 2 RFPs that we have. We're doing that as well. It's hard to say, oh, And forgive me if I seem a little stoic. Because it's almost like there's no appreciation for the groundwork that has to be done to even get to a point where you are issuing money. We issued money last summer. And it was no easy feat, and we put in a lot of hours, and it was only 1.5, 2.5 of us that did that. We are now looking at the summer RFPs, going to be working with an evaluation team to get those evaluated. There's some people that think we ought to do the evaluations. I've gotten comments about that. The council was clear they want others to do that, so we're managing that as well.
Sika, can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
Can I pause you for 1 second? I appreciate the one-on-ones that you did with all of the council members. Because I asked the same question. I never wanted to assume like what I think you all are doing or not. So I asked this question in my one-on-one just to get a better understanding, because I'm not with you all. I'm not with you all. And so you shedding light on in that one-on-one, giving me the description of the previous funding and what that looked like for your team. The amount of hours, I can't remember exactly what you possibly coded, but it was something way out there. And so as a startup, we use that word as a startup, I was impressed, but I mean, again, you do what you gotta do as you start out.
Right.
And so, and I think I may have recommended that, you may have other folks on your council, right, that have this consultant. So it may be warranted to shed that light of like, this is what all goes into what we're doing amongst our small team to try even just to make possibly this funding happen. Now, if you're looking at taking it to the next level, right, this is where my recommendations are as the executive director, is because it's not sustainable based on how you describe your team trying to do the previous funding to take us to the next level. So I would just share and add that very clear, like, hey, we are all doing this, just the amount to even get to an evaluation or get an evaluation team. I mean, so even sharing that insight might go possibly even further for the folks to understand, like, this is why I need this.
I mean, we're just doing it every day.
Yeah.
We're in it every day. Between the model that we have right now with the 4 of us will not be sustainable to try and get all of this out. It's just not going to be.
There's a 5 of you, and you have a contract with Holly, so
but she's part-time. I mean, she
$60,000 a year part-time.
She doesn't work full-time for us. She is a contractor. She gives us way more than what she's supposed to because she believes in what we're doing. But at any point, there are times when I can't push her any further than she's going. We're busting our butts. It's no other way to say it. Trying to get the council what it needs to be able to make your decisions. When we're putting these RFPs together, they don't just come out of the air. We go back and forth to make sure that they say what they need to say, that the objectives are clear, that it is going to get to the result that the council wants. We're all doing that. Jacinta spends her time making sure this building is the way that it needs to be, because we want it to be a center of the community that the community can use, and they are using it for sure. And so I guess we've just been so busy doing it. It's hard to say, well, I do this every day. I do that every day. And so I don't know what the public is saying. One of the reasons we don't, I don't.
Well, I would encourage you to read the newspaper.
I don't want to read the newspaper, Paul, because
come on, just a moment. Just wait. You should, and here's why. It's their money.
I agree.
And I don't necessarily agree with the things they're saying. It's important that we hear from the public what their concerns are. And by the way, it's on all sides. I
absolutely agree.
Some of the biggest proponents of this organization are voicing concern. Again, the reason I asked the question the way I asked it was to give you an opportunity to sort of tell the community, what is it that you're doing? And when
We
you
are
say
trying-
I'm being stoic.
No, I'm being,
There's 10 volunteers.
Mr.
By
Mitchell,
the way, wait. There are 10 volunteers, Sika, who sit on this council, who bust our asses too, pardon me, bust our rear ends as
understand.
well, right? And guess what? There's no room for being stoic. We just have to do our work, rolling up our sleeves and getting to work.
do you
That's,
think I'm not doing that?
no, I don't,
Okay,
I'm
because
asking
that is
you
what
to
I'm getting.
articulate what it is
And
that
so
you do.
I am trying. And we are busting our butts. And when I say I don't read the paper, it is not because I'm not interested in what people have to say. We have all kinds of opportunities for people to come directly to me, to us, to voice their concerns. And I try to take every email, every phone call, every meeting, and I try to explain, yes, we could shovel money out, but then we would get dinged, the council would get dinged for not having the accountability in place for what that money does and what it means, for not having the evaluations in place for what it does and what it means. And so it's not just about shoveling the money out. We also want to make sure that we have the accountability in place to clearly show what that money is to be used for. So my impression is that not only is it to fill gaps, but it's also to help move the needle. And so we could plug gaps, sure, but is that really changing lives of the children and family in this neighborhood or in this community? And so that is part of the framework that we're trying to put together. So I don't mean to be disrespectful, and I apologize because that was not my purpose. But just like the council members are doing it, and I know you all are doing a lion's share, and this is volunteer, so are we, so am I. And I'm asking you for some assistance because we need it. We need the assistance.
I will say this, I sat there and I thought I wanted to try very hard to get, I don't want to say no, just to say no. I'm not saying no to say no. And I'm getting very used to being a voice of one or two or three. And believe me, I know what happens before the meeting. I get it. I'm okay with that. But I'm gonna keep raising the concerns. I'm going to keep suggesting that when I reach out to other councils, some of which are just getting started, like Escambia County's going through very similar growing pains that we're going through. If you reach out to Alachua County, most of them, and I would feel much more comfortable if this were a request that was being made after we funded programs. If after we funded programs and you were trying to accomplish, look, this being a community center, I told you, that's the only reason I even voted for it. I thought it was a waste of money. I thought we should have taken what the superintendent was offering us, which was free office space. That's what I thought. But we decided, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to use it as community center. That was not on the referendum that voters voted for. It's a nice to have, but it isn't a requirement. What is a requirement? What is a requirement? And I encourage you to go back and look at that every single day. What is a requirement is the delivery of services for children and families in need in our community. And what I would say is when you get programs funded and on the street, I would feel 100 times more comfortable with more positions. And by the way, I'm very prepared. If I had to vote today, I would be prepared to vote for one more position. But I'm not prepared to vote for 3 more positions. And that's just how I feel. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying based on all of the information that I have seen from the beginning, that's how I feel. And by the way, I encourage you to read the newspaper. I think it's great you take emails and phone calls. The amount of, I was at the homeless shelter fundraiser last week, the amount of people that came over to talk about the Children's Services Council, again, from all aspects, every walk of life. It was a remarkable fundraiser. It was just so impressive that people are watching and taking note. And I didn't have any answers for that. I really didn't. Yeah, and saying yes to 3 more positions. If we're having this conversation 6 months from now, 9 months from now, I have no problem with it. Again, there's a need, we need to fill it. We haven't funded anything yet. There's no funding out there, and we have 4 very capable people, plus a contract, plus a free position from the AARP, that I just would hope, but plus 1 more. Again, the idea.
Excuse me, I want to correct that. The 1 position we had, we filled, that's Stephanie's arm.
Right.
So we don't have another one in the budget.
Yeah, no. That's why I said I was prepared today to vote for 1 more position above and beyond Stephanie's position. I'm totally good with that. So it's 4 full-time positions, a contract position, and a position that would be funded by the AARP.
Mr. Mitchell, this is based on, your position right now is based on the your assessment that currently what they have right now is feasible to fulfill where we're trying to go with in the next.
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, it's getting money. You see, there's certain phases, right? You gotta tell the community what it is you want. Okay, so we have a group of people who are currently doing that. Yes, I get it's a startup. There's other things you're doing besides that. So your point is a good point, and that is I made it sound very simple. I only know how to make it sound simple. I don't know how to just start reading from a piece of paper and making sense. Like I want to make sense. So I put this in little boxes. You go out to the community, you tell them what it is you need. The association has the Children's Services Council and Trust. I know I'm going to screw up the acronym, so I apologize to Michelle Watson and her crew, but they have RFPs that have been used by other communities. Ours isn't identical, but we don't need to recreate the wheel. So we go out and we tell the community what it is that we're looking for, and we have staff to do that. Once that goes out, we have the community who's included in the evaluation process. I hope that it's a diverse group. I know you guys put applications out. I think that's such a good thing. I really do. And you can't force people to be involved. You can only invite them. And I think that's a terrific thing that you guys put out. And again, you go through that evaluation process and you're sort of managing the procurement. It's the implementation. We don't implement, we just evaluate as the people that we've given the grants to are implementing. And so having, a group of somebody on staff that does that, again, that's Stephanie, and I believe 1 more is important. I'm not saying scrap the whole thing. I'm just saying that's where I fall. And then as we get more and more funding out there, and it begins to grow, we have a much better feel as to how much of a demand there is on our time. And I go back to the point that I made, not the nice to haves, but the requirements that the voters voted on. Again, not the managing this as a community resource. It's a great thing to have as a community resource. So I'm not saying scrap it. That wasn't the requirement. That wasn't a requirement. That was a nice to have that we created. So that's why I'm totally good with the concept of one more, because I don't want to burn you guys out, more than you already are. But I don't think hiring more people is the right answer. That's how I feel.
Want to recognize Chair.
I apologize for being late, gentlemen. I had jury duty and
Were you selected?
I was selected. I had to go back for trial on Wednesday, but it just took a lot longer than I anticipated. So I apologize. I am really sorry for being late. Okay.
All right, we are just from the part of the agenda of going through the proposed staffing and the additional information there that you provided, articulating what some of these positions might be responsible for covering, associated with the funding. Right now, we're at a space where we're not doing a recap, where Mr. Mitchell is right now, leaning towards, or should I say, in favor of one additional position. So we're just in the middle.
one?
Well,
It's a program.
yeah,
Yes, I'm sorry, I had to get the quality assurance specialist,
Okay, just one of those as opposed to two.
right?
Okay.
And a community relations specialist. I just want to start with an additional quality assurance person.
Okay.
and so my question would be, I did have a follow-up to our last meeting, which was around the actual cost. I know there was some updating that we had requested on the funding purposes for those positions or whatnot, and just wanted to know that we need to have any conversation around that. I think you were like kind of doing a generalized insurance choice and.
Yeah, so the information was updated in accordance to what Mr. Mitchell had asked.
Okay.
And so everything you see there is updated. You'll see the first grid is what we currently have. The second grid or chart is not a grid. Oh, okay.
Oh, thanks.
So, sorry, the first chart is what we currently have. The second chart is what I am proposing with the two specialists and the one community relations specialist. And that would be for 6 months. So the number $678,013 would be for those positions, three new positions for 6 months, because that's what we'd be looking at for the rest of this year. And then if you flip it over, you'll see what the impact would be for a full year, so that you have that information. So it is updated with the correct insurances and an estimation of long-term disability. The county is still working with us to get us into their long-term disability through the MOU, but I was able to do a little bit of an estimation from information that they had sent.
So question, so on column 10, this 819,858, that number is for all of the positions that you are,
That's for all
including the current staff.
Yes, and that would be for a fiscal year, a full fiscal year. So if we were to get the positions, this would be our cost moving forward for the next at least 2 years. Now that's barring any differences in insurances and those kinds of things.
And when you say you're waiting on the Leon County, that has potential to impact that number?
Not much.
Not
It's a good estimate, but it's not the exact numbers, whereas with the other ones, I tried to be fairly exact, except for going back and accounting for under health insurance, accounting for more of a family of 4 versus just this. And at the mid-age range.
So, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Y'all probably covered this, so I apologize for asking for the repetition. So what I'm not clear on, and I'm hoping you all, and I'm trying to look through this, but what is the justification for the two program and quality assurance specialists?
So if you look at this chart,
Uh-huh.
this chart gives you what the proposed programming is for this year going into next year.
Okay,
If you go to the oversight, this shows you the positions, if we were to get all positions that we requested, the positions and over which programs they would have responsibility. So I didn't say program specialist 1 or program specialist 2, but in other words, this shows you how we would break this programming down with the staff.
okay. So, I'm sorry, can I ask another question?
Yes.
So I just want to make sure. Absolutely. So with the current programs that we have planned to go out for the so for the summer
For the
and
summer,
and for the summer supports, if we kept the staff exactly as is, what is the burden on our current staff? I guess I want to know that. And then whatever else we roll out, what will the burden be? Like, why do you need the additional staff? I'm trying to get an understanding. I don't want to burn Dina out, I don't want to burn
well,
something.
we're close.
Okay,
So we have, okay, so let me see if I can explain it. The original design of our program accountability and research manager. She brought skills that we didn't even know we need. So she spends the majority of her time doing the research piece in addition to our needs assessment, pulling out the information so that we can give the council a clear view of why we're suggesting this programming, what those objectives are going to be, and then when that is approved, she goes and writes all of the RFPs.
So
all
no
of the statement of work.
management. She's not managing any program.
She's managing how the programs come to be. So it's not managing
the data.
the day-to-day of a program, but rather how those programs come to be.
I understand.
How we get those.
Okay,
She also will be responsible for overseeing the evaluation of every program that we fund.
okay,
So doing that research and working with whatever evaluation piece we use, whether it is one that we use internally or whether we determine we really need to bring in an outside evaluator
Okay.
to do this. So that is part of what she does
okay,
every day.
okay,
So there is no break in that.
Okay.
She's doing that every day because as we get moving with the strategic framework as it is approved, then that goes into her shop to do.
Okay.
She works with that, with Dina as the oversight of operations,
okay,
helping ensure that we're staying where we need to be. And then Holly, as our special programs manager, comes in and provides that consultation, if you will.
okay.
So that's how we start. So that's how we even will get to the statement of works that the council is going to get. Making sure that it is where you all want it to be and then moving forward.
Can I pause just for a second on the research piece? This, by the way, Dr. Glenn, your question is exactly what I asked. And you, I think, asked it much better. And I'm glad you came in because that's what I asked Sika.
Okay.
So as it relates, now we're kind of drilling down, as it relates to the research piece that you said, Stephanie brought with her a set of skills that you didn't even know you needed. There are we number 13 or number 14 children's services councils and an association that's done a lot of the research, has gone, has taken the steps for 30 years before us. Does it make sense? And we're members, we pay dues to that association, and we have the ability to reach out to the others. Does it make sense? I mean, do we? I think Stephanie's got a lot of good skill sets that we do need, that we knew we needed when we brought her on. Does it make sense to say, go and do research that may have already been done ahead of it?
She helps to pull all of that together. So part of what she does is not only work with those other 12 through fact to get that information in, see what makes sense for us to use and what doesn't. And then what is currently out there, she hones all of that and pulls it together in a way that we can understand it and see what the other CSCs are doing versus what our needs assessment says we need versus other research that may be out there. And that includes her connecting with FAMU. She's connected with professionals at Florida State, at FAMU, in our community, so that we make sure that we are presenting to you the best options and the most updated information. So I see it as very valuable for overseeing to make sure that we're giving you what it is you want, given all of that information. So I see from your point of view, maybe you don't see that, but from my point of view, it is very valuable.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Please.
Tell me, because this will help me understand the value. Tell me what she's brought to the council. Like, give me an example of something that when we made up our mind to do something, we did it based on this research that you're talking about.
All of the family supports, that we gave you a strategic framework with these very succinct one-pagers that we went through and made it concise so that the council could clearly see what the needs assessment does, what the justification is for the program, what the outcomes have been, maybe some trouble spots with other people who have tried to do this, and what we expect those data points to be. That was what she did. So that's what she continues to do for us.
So what I'm hearing, if you don't mind, is what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, she's verifying the needs assessment that was done and saying, okay, we know that we have a need in this area. Here's the best way to break down what needs to address those particular needs. Here are programs that are viable that will plug in those needs. She's doing that research and making the case for like the learning centers. She's saying, this we know will solve what we understand to be needed in the needs from the needs assessment. And here is what we're going to do. And does she help draft the RFPs too?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That's my understanding of what Stephanie does. Okay. All right.
And so when you were walking in, I was saying, so there's these buckets. So she goes through this process, and then the RFP goes out.
Right.
And then she's part of the evaluation.
Correct.
And then that's when the quality assurance kind of piece kicks in.
Okay.
And she has moved, if I may, excuse me, she has moved on to the next
one.
thing. And all of the program interface would happen with the program specialists. So they're the ones that are in there every day with the multiple programs that we will contract to ensure that they are adhering to what was done or what they said they would do in their contract. Stephanie has now moved on to the next thing in line.
When you hired her, Sika, you said that you found out she brought skills that you didn't even know we needed and we needed done. What was it that you were hiring her for then?
She was being hired to help us find out those accountability measures, which she does in the one pager.
Right.
She was being hired to help us hone in the research. We have the needs assessment, but there is other research out there. So we've got the needs assessment, we've got other measures out there, help connect with the community as well as bring in what's going on with our other CSCs. But she also is a statistician. So when we get to that evaluation piece, she has the skill set to help us ensure that we're getting the evaluation that we want, that goes along with the program.
So her job is not one and done. Like she's moving from one project, from one area to the next area and then evaluating it. Right. Okay.
And then we'll come back around to ensure that we've got the right evaluation in place for each of the programs that we fund.
So in my mind, excuse me, in my mind, I can't count her as being accountable for managing when I say manage, I mean the day-to-day, like making sure these programs are rolled out the way they need to be rolled out, doing on-site visits. That's not her job. We need somebody else to do that. But she's doing reviewing the assessments, making sure doing the data and making the case for what we need to meet the needs of the individuals in our county. Okay. That's my understanding. Does that make sense to you all? Because I was trying to figure out basically what is Stephanie doing? Like, why is she not involved with the programmatic part? But I hear why she isn't, and I understand what it is she's doing. Now, what I need to understand is, so to evaluate the progress, because that's my concern too, like on a day-to-day basis, who are the people that are making sure when the RFPs do go out? Stephanie did the evaluation, the needs assessment. She said, we need these things. We pass the baton on now to a programmatic person. And to me, that's the person that's evaluating managing the program.
Working
Right.
with the program.
Who's doing that?
That's your program accountability, your program and quality. Your program and quality assurance specialist.
Okay.
And they're the ones that are in with all of the programs on a day-to-day basis, out in the field, making sure, helping to monitor them to see if there's something that we need to help them with. If they need to go in TA, making sure that what they're collecting is proper, making sure that they are able to use our data system. So those are the people that are in that day-to-day.
Okay. And that's what you're advocating for.
Yes, and then I am advocating for a community engagement person, somebody that is going out when we get these engagements. I mean, I am everywhere on the weekends, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but we need someone to pull all that in for us, someone to manage our volunteers, and and someone to manage our media, because eventually we will be moving away from having that contractor. That's why Holly is special program, because she just kind of plugs wherever I might need her to be.
Let me back to you got the RFP. The RFP is going to have she's already set the tone for what the person's going to deliver, whoever's right. So she's using that information to, I'm assuming at some point she has some type of platform or report or something where she can report out. So if she come back,
That would be SAMS. So
Okay.
data
Okay.
collection.
okay, and so she won't have to manage any of that system's already.
Well, she's the one that will go in and pull that information out and make it tell the story.
Okay,
Whatever that story is, she is the one that helps to make it tell the story.
okay, your quality assurance people who are monitoring the programs are providing that information back to her, or what do they do with that information?
So they are providing that back to her, also under the auspices of Dina, so that we can ensure that we are getting what it is we think we should be getting.
Okay.
According to their contract and according to their objectives, and being able to say, so you've been collecting date of birth. That's not necessary for what we need. What we need is the number of days they have attended, and that report needs to go in. So what help do we need to give you in order to make sure that you're doing that?
Who has taken on that role in regards to previous funding, or have we not
We
had
didn't
that?
have it.
Okay.
We
all
didn't
right.
have it. Last summer, they just told us what they were gonna do and the number of people they were gonna serve, and that's all we got. We didn't have anything as far as the quality of their service. We didn't do any of those evaluations because it was such a quick cycle.
Okay, and catch your finger.
Yeah, I did, but I'll wait till you're done.
Okay, all right. And so if you I want you to think about this question carefully when you answer it. If you were not able to, let's say if you were just able to even just get the one position for the quality assurance, do you feel like that would have some type of impact in regards to this current goal in these current programs?
I'm concerned we wouldn't be able to as fast getting funding and stuff done the way that the council wants as far as the evaluation. We could get it out, but I don't know if we could get the accountability in the way that I believe the council wants.
And the accountability, what do you feel like you want as far as?
To make sure that the programs we are funding are accountable to their contract measures. And for those that are moving the needle, that we are getting the data we need to show longitudinally that that program is working. That's my understanding. I hope you ain't here.
Okay. Are there any? So say you don't get them, just hypothetically, then you and Ms. Arena and all of us know that we still have to find a way to make things work. Are there any other avenues out there where you kind of explore? Let's say you don't have a quality assurance person that is per se just designated to going out to these programs. Okay. And is there any way to weave in a fail-safe, if you will, of these programs that are receiving funding that they automatically have to? Stephanie's come up with some type of data measurement point for them to report back, and there's some way to verify that. I mean, are there any thoughts around how to come up with?
I mean, we would have to make it work, of course. If you all don't see clear to give us any additional positions, we would just have to continue what we're doing. Just kind of map it together, and you do this one day, you do that one day. Nobody really has a lane. We're just trying to put it all together, and we'll continue to do that, but it could augment some of the process that moving forward.
Here's my last question from a procedural standpoint. So on the agenda, you've placed on there recommendations for us to move this to the council for vote. So do we all have to be in an agreement on this in order to do that? Or is one of us able to make a motion to move the discussion to the council?
You all are able to do whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're able to do whatever.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be that we are moving, hey, we move to, only move one position. But since we're not all in agreement, we can just move it bigger.
That's what we did the last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with the 10 council members all sort of having their own thoughts, I like the fact that the executive committee sort of vets things, talks about them, so that it isn't just Sika explaining. It's also the three of us where somebody might have a question. So I like the fact. To me, this is a very healthy. It's awkward times when we don't agree, and I don't. But I think it's healthy to have in a smaller group. And then when the 10 people come, people can offer up. Well, Sika is recommending 3 positions, and here's the reason why. Go through the entire chart. And then I have an opportunity, let's just say that I speak up and say, I don't disagree that may happen, but before I feel comfortable funding 3 positions, I feel much more comfortable funding 1. And here's why. And I had the benefit of having had this conversation, and we're sort of giving that benefit to the other 7, and the same would go for you. Well, Paul's idea of 1, I kind of like the idea of 2, and here's why. And Dr. Glenn may say, no, I'm all for all 3, or I want 0. So I don't think if we want to, we can bring a recommendation, but I like the idea that we've had this conversation, and we're 3 of the 10 votes already. And I just think it's helpful.
I'd like to make that motion if possible, if it is a motion, to move it forward, because I'd like to hear from the other council members and their background, their expertise. Like I said, I still go back to watching the program services committee where you had several of them making kind of recommendations. So I'd like to hear maybe, or even ask them more questions as far as their background, how they arrived to, supporting the current additional position. So we have to do a motion for that.
I think we do. I think we just decided the last time we're gonna take it to the full council.
Okay.
And I completely agree with you. Right, we don't, right, but I do like the fact that we have talked this through, and now I better understand. But can I ask another question, please? All right, so I do hear the case for needing a program of quality assurance specialist. What I am trying to decide in my mind is, do we need to, or can we make it with 1? And the only thing that I keep on going back to is, what is the accountability of this person? You know, like, what is really their job? Because the expectation that I have, I expect for, and I'm gonna ask you both the same question so y'all can kind of think it through. But when I think of this program and quality assurance specialist, I expect for this person, for this particular, whatever RFP that goes out, they know everything that's going on at every one of the funded organizations. They have site visits, they show up and announce, they know exactly what's going on. They are right on target with community satisfaction with the program. They can tell us if the funds are being spent appropriately or if they see some lacks. Like, I want them to know the program. And I want to be able to go to them at any point in time and say, okay, I know you're over this program. Tell me exactly what's going on. Are we wasting our money, or are we really getting the bang for our buck? Because we, like you said, we didn't have the staff to give us that information the last time. I want to know, like, for everything that we fund, what is actually happening? And are we getting the results, or are they just really playing kickball all day long? You know, like, what are we actually getting from this program? So I expect for this person to be on the ground daily, day by day, managing this. And to me, that's a full-time job. Like, that's a lot. And I can't expect one person to be able to do that for multiple things and have the understanding that and so my question to Sika, and you practically answered the question, given where we are going with our funding, please convince me that we need 2 of these people for the programs that we are rolling out this year. Does that make sense to y'all?
So we are rolling out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I won't even count summer because those are, well, if we get someone on board, we'll have that. Prenatal, we'd be starting in the fall. Apprenticeships, we'd be starting in the fall. And then the small rolling grants that the program committee said they wanted us to explore, which are those intermittent grants, which is a whole process within itself. If we do that 4 times a year, I believe that there is enough for 2 full-time people to get them to really know that RFP and those programs. I have to go back, because when I go back and look at the position description or the summary, so facilitates and coordinates that CIP engagement, those relations and that training, assists with the development, the management, the preparation of the funding cycle, so they would know that, the contract management and execution, so they would be in and compliance, the distribution of the funds, they know exactly how much, when it's going out, what you should have been using it for. If they need to go in, make sure that your financial report is accurately showing what it needs to show, monitors the performance according to the specific programs, including compliance with contract deliverables and participation outcome. So I tried to detail all of those little pieces of what they would be doing with each of those programs that satisfy that particular RFP.
And so, guys, based on my expectation of what I expect these people to do, and if we're going to roll out 7 RFPs, I don't think we could give all of that to one person. I really don't. And I don't know if we can give it to 2 people, to be honest with you, because I plan to nail them to the wall respectfully. Like, you know,
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I plan to nail them.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you know, it's on me and I totally get that. But this is just for these 2. Now, mind you, we've only gone through 2 strategic frameworks. We've gone through early learning, which we're having to come back to, and family support summer. We haven't gotten to prenatal with the program committee. We haven't gotten to what homelessness is going to look like. So we haven't even gotten to those, which at some point will have some sort of programming that goes along with it. And so in my heart of hearts, I want to make it clear, in my heart of hearts, I'm not just asking for positions just to have them. I'm not just spending money just to spend it. I want to make sure that we are giving the council what it has asked for.
I do program management.
I did it for the entire Department of Education. And I am sitting here. You know how you asked me about the my no vote? You said I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here shocked. I appreciate what you're saying, except we're not hiring someone to administer these programs. It is a full-time position. It requires a full-time employee to take on several different programs.
Okay.
But every single day of their life, they're not going to need to distribute funds and make sure that the fund, that is a, by the way, we have a Dina that does that. These one and really two, because I think that's what Stephanie should also be doing, individuals, I think it's plenty. Now, we're hiring contractors. That's who's getting the grants. We're hiring people to actually do it. And I want to hold their feet to the fire when they come and you know, present to us. I want to hear what they've done. I want the data to show what they've done. Candidly, if the type of positions that we're talking about, the quality assurance positions, I don't know that these people are, just based on the salary that's being proposed, are qualified to do what you just described. Again, I would say to you, go back to the Department of Education that administers a lot of programs that look very similar to the Children's Services Council. Not identical, but very similar. And one program specialist manages statewide for 67 counties, you know, plus an awful lot of programs. And I'm not saying, oh, we should do it just like they do it. I'm saying that in terms of maybe I just have different expectations.
Yeah,
Like,
what is your expectation?
my
That's what I want to
expectation
know.
is that the CSC has this amount of money, and this is before you came in. We have a limited amount of resources. I would like to spend those resources on programs that serve children and their families, because that's what the voters of Leon County voted on. Not to hire people to work on those, but to take this money and find the best way to get it out into the community, right? So I think that we need a staff. We need a staff to make sure that we're getting paid, that there is quality assurance being done, that, I mean, you know, Mr. Watts, the RFP or the ITN, whatever it was that you went out with on the IT, that's the providers of the services feeding information into us, and the system sort of does an evaluation. And so, yes, I can see a quality assurance person or two with Stephanie, who is monitoring these. And by the way, I think Dina is perfectly capable of doing it. I think Sika is, I think Jacinta is, and this new person, and that's why I think one. And if 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, we've got all these programs and we don't feel like, you know, you say to Joe, who's the quality assurance person we hire, Joe, tell me about these six programs. Well, with all due respect, Dr. Glenn, I can tell you about 4. I ran out of time. I don't have, you know. Then to me, that's when you add another position. I'm not against adding the positions. I just don't think we have any programs out there to know. You know, I don't blame Sika for asking for them. I just think it's a little bit of a cart before the horse. And I would just like to see how far can we get
Without it. So I guess, so I agree with you. And I think the only thing that bothers me is I don't want to wait till Joe doesn't know. That's my concern, because
That's
if I have a neighbor come to me and say, you know, we're giving you an awful amount of money to manage, you know, with this program. How do you know for a fact that we're getting the bang for a buck? I want to be able to say, I know because I talked to Joe and Susie, who are managing these programs, and they can tell me this information. What I don't want, this is what worries me, Paul. I worry about somebody asking Joe, and Joe doesn't know, and we don't know, and that ends up on the front page that the CSC is spending money, but they can't tell us how effective those programs are.
I had a call from a reporter just like that,
Okay.
and I wasn't able to. I wasn't able to
That's why
explain a
I want-
public records request.
Okay.
Yeah, I know how that feels. It
Okay.
feels a little awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
So-
lose a little bit of confidence.
You do.
Yeah,
And that's why I want the confidence, and I guess that's the difference. I mean, I guess you're a little bit more comfortable with being able to say, we're gonna get there. My level of comfort, you know, my husband and I have different financial levels of comfort, you know?
are
But
you the more,
it's a conservative one, yeah. Yeah, but I want to know for a fact that we have the data, and I can look anybody in the eye and say we have it. And the conversation with Joe that you just described terrifies me, you know, and it's just a level of comfort. And I'd love to know what you think, Mr. Watts, but I want to find out what the board's, the council's level of comfort is, because that's why I tend to say, let's have the staff and make sure we have what we need.
Mr. Ross, just before you, let me just
Yeah.
finish this one thought.
Sure.
This is not, we're turning on the lights and every single one of these is going on at the same time. Before you walked in, I said to Sika, she walked through it. I said, it's just a whole bunch of words when you're throwing them at me, right? And where she understands it, I need them just kind of, okay, here's what's going to happen next. I don't think we're going to find out that Joe doesn't know that he has 6 and he hasn't gotten to the last 2. I think the light switch is more of a dimmer. It is not an on-off. It doesn't, we don't go all of a sudden where we're fully funded, all these programs, because by the way, if that's the case, then we've got Stephanie as a full-timer because she doesn't need to be doing any research at that point. We've got all these programs funded. And I want to go back to that research piece because it sounds like there's an awful lot of time being spent there. That is why we are members of the association. They've done this research. And I'm not saying Stephanie's not a brilliant woman. She certainly is very bright. But there's other people who have done this. And so I want to stretch our resources as far as we can. And that's, again, I'm not saying no to the outreach manager, the community, whatever it's called, manager, or and I'm not saying I think it's an awful idea to have a second person. I'm saying the dimmer switch is as we start to ramp up and Joe is starting to, you know, kind of his head's ducking behind below the water. That's when the executive director comes and says, my team is being stretched and it's being stretched too far. And here's what's happening. Here's what everybody is doing right now. And this is why they're starting to burn out. I really need a second position to help Joe as these new programs are coming on. That to me is, that's a reasonable approach. Again, I'm not saying that Sika, you're wrong looking into the future. I'm saying, let's get some programs funded. Let's bring someone on to do quality assurance. Certainly, let's let Stephanie continue to do research, but also rely kind of heavily on her. I mean, that's kind of her strength is a quality assurance. And her exact word, your words, that's what we hired her to do. The extra talent she brought to the table, we didn't know we needed. I think that's a nice to have. It's like we didn't know we needed a community, a place that the community could assemble if they needed it. That's not what the voters asked for. I'm not saying that they wouldn't support it, but that's not what they asked for. They were very, very clear. The referendum was very clear that the county voted on, and it again, it didn't speak to the research. I don't want to say, oh, it's just that Stephanie has to do just this. So I think of my approach more as the dimmer as opposed to on off. And that's where I
Okay.
Mr. Watts, thank you so much for.
No problem. Well, where I was as a workaholic myself
Okay.
and conservative and with finances and, and someone who likes to challenge. Originally, when it was first brought to us, I was just like, no, in my head. Okay. But again, I'm just gonna go back to, a lot of people on this council with expertise, right? And I made sure I went back when I heard the program service committee had the recommendation, made sure I went back and watched that because I wanted to hear that conversation. So something that I heard, from Liza, who I respect a lot, and she's making, statements that you want to think about a person for each $1 million, so I try to remove myself, my own bias, right? Most as best I can out of that to say, if you have several people suggesting that certain things that we want from this council to occur, then I can get on board with that because I'm relying on some other professionals who maybe have some of that background. But I was in the same space. I was in the same space because I come from that world where whether you have positions or not, there's things that have to occur and get done. You find out what can occur. Maybe we don't need to go on a conference. Maybe right now, at this moment, we're in startup. You get what I'm saying? Something, what can be sacrificed and what can't be sacrificed. But I hear from the others, which is why I want to bring it to the council and here it may change, but at this point, I am in favor of bringing forth her plan. And I can definitely see about the client relations person. I want to add this, I'm sorry, not to go down this rabbit hole, I just want to check. This is something else I think Liza brought up when our previous council meetings about someone to go after grants. And so I meant to bring that up before, and I'd be even more interested if any of those positions would have that skill set or how would you go about looking at someone to go after grants and funding? That would seem to be important in my mind.
So moving with the recommendation of Councilmember McFadden, there's $50,000 in the budget for grant writing. It's not for a position, but to be able to pay someone to go after the grants. I will tell you, I am concerned on whether we could manage a grant right now. So I haven't pushed us going after any of these grants because I'm concerned about making sure we manage it. But there is $50,000 in the budget, and her recommendation was you pay someone to write that grant. We do not have a grant writer on staff, and I have never purported that any of us had. I can write, of course, but I never purported that any of us had, quote, grant writing capabilities.
Because if I understand it correctly, that's another opportunity to fund programs, that might offset perhaps, some of this as well. I mean, I see that almost weekly, I'll say weekly, different types of grants that come out, funding from SAMHSA or whatnot. And I meant to bring that up. And so I would put that in the back pocket if that's an avenue to explore, but that's my position.
I would, yeah. I appreciate that. And once again, I apologize for being late, but I would like to hear the rationale for the community relations specialist one more time, please, if you don't mind.
So the community relations specialist would be ensuring of the community awareness of CSC. If you remember, one of the recommendations of the needs assessment was to get out there and tell people what you're doing. It's clear to me we need to do that. And so that would be part of that person's position to make awareness of the initiatives and the programming, managing all outreach events, whether they're ones that we do or ones that we have been asked to participate in, would support our internal and external communications, would manage our website and our social media. Right now, Holly is doing that as well, and would handle the media and the press relation in addition to managing our volunteer base. So helping to ensure we've got lots of volunteers to do the evaluation, as well as just have volunteers, because we do get calls a lot, realizing it's not in, the state ordinance or whatever. But we do get calls about, can we help people with getting volunteers for their various things, providers. And then that person would also be the primary contact for public records requests.
Okay, and I didn't hear the conversation around this. So I appreciate you reviewing that. I would like for us to go to the council with this, like you recommended. As of right now, and I totally understand where your position is, but to be honest with my colleagues here, I clearly see the need for a program and quality assurance specialists, plural, in my mind, to manage these programs. I don't know where I sit yet with regards to the community relations specialist. I know there's a need, and I guess, I want to make sure there is a specific need. So if we're able to cover it with our current staff and still do what we need to do, then let's continue to do as much as we can until Joe doesn't know that Josephine doesn't know. So that's just where I'm just being honest. I just wanted to share with y'all where I'm leaning, but I look forward to the conversation with the full council in a couple of weeks.
So do I just let you take?
No, go
ahead. I'm gonna pass the torch back over to you.
All right, God bless you. All right. So this is my understanding as to where we were. Thank y'all for your work on this. I do want to express that because I know it's a lot of work. I know that y'all have pain points. I mean, I get it. And to have us sit here week after week and go through this, I'm sure it's got to be painful for you guys, but y'all do it with a smile, and I value that. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate the conversation here because this does help me understand this more. I understand your point of view. I understand exactly where you are. And I hate the fact that I can't just call y'all and have a one-on-one conversation. This sunshine thing drives me crazy. But I mean, I understand it, but I value the conversation because this banter gives me an opportunity to understand everybody's point of view. And then at the end of the day, we have to make a decision. And all we can do is go with what's here, and we don't always agree, but boy, we're trying. I mean, I that's all we could do, give it 100%. So I value that. And it's not easy, but I value that everybody's committed to doing this, and you all are really trying to help us do it the right way. So I just wanted to share that because I leave some of these meetings frustrated, but I'm like, but at least everybody's heart is in the right place, So I just wanted to emphasize that. Okay, so what we will do is we are going to take this proposal back to the full council at our meeting. We will give you all an opportunity to present it. We will say that the executive council has had an opportunity to review it, but we have brought it back to them. We will have an opportunity to hear from everybody, and then we will make a decision at that point, whether we're going to go with the full proposal or any other proposals that may go up, that may be proposed at the time. Are y'all in agreement? Yes, sir.
Yeah, and by the way, let me second your comments. It is awkward. It is awkward to have conversations like this public.
Yeah.
But it's important because it's not our money.
Right.
It's somebody else's. So it's awkward as it is, and trust me, I would much rather walk into a meeting and say yes, always yes. But if I don't believe it, and you're right, Dr. Glenn, what's in my heart is no. I'm going to say no,
I agree.
and that's it's important. So that I understand, because I can't call, Mr. Watts, what you are supportive of is all three of these positions.
I'm supportive of the 2 quality assurance.
Oh, okay. So you and Dr. Glenn
We're on the same page. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is sort of in limbo.
That I
In
feel
hopes
like,
that other people will be able to talk about it.
and I feel like that's something that can be sacrificed temporarily, but the 2 quality assurance positions, I think are going to be needed based on what I've hurt.
And let me ask you this, and from a timing perspective,
Mhm.
just kind of thinking through what putting aside the community relations, the timing perspective, the dimmer approach. If we brought one on immediately, all these programs aren't going on all at once.
Mhm.
So is it something that you want to hear from Sika that, hey, no, all of them are going on all at once? I don't think that's what this says, but is it bring one on now, one on 6 months from now, or 9 months from now? Is that something that we should have talked about so that the full council gets the benefit of?
Can I say, yeah, go ahead.
May I interject? So if you go back to the chart, you'll see that in family supports, we're contracting for the resource center.
And the resource center is one contract, one
It will
sole
be one
source.
provider.
So again, this, Dr. Glenn, this is so important. I don't leave that just yet, Sika. One provider, which means that person, Joe,
Mhm.
okay, and then
Okay.
would have to oversee one provider and make sure that their funds are being distributed, that they're if they need technical assistance of how to feed data in. So it's one.
So I see Joe managing multiple projects under family supports. So I see Joe doing the Family Resource Center. I see Joe doing those centers I wish I had when my kids were young with the late night childcare services. I see Joe. So Joe may not just do one. If it's a large project, so for example, when we get to year 2025, and there are now 3 centers and there are multiple things going on and a lot of different data, I expect for Joe just to be managing all of those because it's a lot of different things going on. But in the meantime, all of those different things that are under family supports that we're rolling out, I expect for Joe to have his fingerprints all over all of those.
And so
Go ahead.
I expect for these 2 people
Mhm.
to actually be joining this team, to be prepared to take on their roles, but then also still as a startup, be involved in all of
Well,
it,
everything, I agree. Yeah, I
including,
agree.
you know, if they have to take on a role as they all are with client relations, then doing so. But I would much rather have these people designated as quality assurance,
Right.
getting involved in the process, solidifying the process, because they will need to build out again with another staffing plan. Do you get what I'm
I
saying?
completely agree.
And so I would much rather advocate for those 2. And they have built out their team to continue, and so that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and my point to Mr. Mitchell was that I don't expect Joe to sit in a room and only say, oh, I visited them yesterday.
I got
Yeah, okay, you're right. And so I do expect that he would be involved, just like you, with all of these other activities. And if that does require, like if we don't do the community relations specialist now, Joe may have to do, some of those, take on some of those other things until, it just depends. I mean,
But just kind of going back to your point, the dollar amount is sort of significant here in terms of the number of programs that we can fund. So the dollar amount really doesn't grow very much. I just want to point that out. It's so in terms of Joe's responsibility and Joe number 2, just something, and Sika, maybe between now and the full board meeting, I'll ask the question so that you can provide it. But from a timing perspective, if you brought one position on and then brought the second one on later, what does that do? I mean, I heard you say, basically, we'll just do the best we can if none of them are funded, to Mr. Watts's question. So what happens if one gets approved, one quality assurance gets approved, and then 6 months later, we see where we are on that, and then 6 months later, we bring a second one on? I don't want you to answer now, just kind of think about that, and I'll pose the question and just, I'll vote accordingly based on however you respond. And others can as well. But I think that's good. It really is important information because why are these 2 people going to do? Let's say we hired them today. By the way, Sika was a proponent of doing this quite some time ago. what would they be doing?
But in my understanding, yeah, it was my understanding that we couldn't roll out a lot of these things because we
No,
didn't have
Did
the
you hear what
staff.
she just said? She just said the research had to have been done by Stephanie to get this out there.
No, that is not what I meant. If we had had additional staff, we probably could have gotten the framework done faster. We could have gotten that run through the council faster, could have gotten some RFPs done faster. Remember, when we brought the framework back, the council told us to stop and take it through programming. And so that's what we've been doing. And so I don't want to make it sound like we couldn't have done.
That's not a very, okay, we'll move on.
We can move on. Yeah, let's move
I would
on.
like to.
But
I don't think what you just said reflects what the council did and what you just said in terms of what Stephanie, her importance and what researching programs that she would bring forward unless part of the staffing was having another Stephanie do research. So I just again want to make sure.
that's okay. Let's go ahead and table that for now. But it is my expectation though, that with the appropriate staffing, I would expect these to go out a lot faster. I would expect that, man, if we get this other person, I would want early learning, like, all right, let's get that ramped up. Let's get everything done for it. We have the people that we know. To me, there's lack of excuse. There's lack of space or excuse because we have the staff with the capabilities to get it done. So it's my expectation that if we do these two people, we could roll these things out a whole lot faster.
And Dr. Klein, if after we have these two on, we find that we have we don't have a need for the two people that we've hired.
Mhm.
Are you prepared to cut?
I would address that if necessary.
Okay, all right.
If necessary, right.
That's all I needed to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not wasting money. That honestly, I'm like you. I don't like wasting money, right? But honestly, if we see that we don't need it, then we need to make changes. What I don't want is for us to need it now, but have to go through this every single time to get it.
It's a fair statement.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that whether they're listening right now or they will tune in later, again, two elected officials and then members of the community at large have called me very recently about this. I didn't even know. I was like, you're talking about we have a big item on the agenda today. So it's important that I ask the questions I've asked. We have Sika on record telling us why we're doing what we're doing. And for the experts out there in the world who've done this before and are currently doing it, be it for the state of Florida, for TCC or FAMU or FSU, that they are hearing this conversation and they understand what we're trying to accomplish. And Dr. Glenn is chair. I think it's important that we follow kind of your goal of getting this out there and sort of holding everyone accountable for.
And I think we're all, I would like to think that we are all in agreement with that.
Yes.
And that our job is to get these things out appropriately and as quickly as we can. But honestly, Mr. Mitchell, we've got to equip them to be able to do it. And my proposal is let's equip them to give them what they need. Let's roll these out as quickly as we can. Then when we sit down and evaluate if changes need to be made, we'll address that at the time.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, of course. All right. Thank you very much. I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me. Anything else on the agenda? Okay, is that it? Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay.
Mr. Mitchell.
So as the last two executive committees, I have asked for travel policy and a procurement.
Mr. Mitchell, one second. There's public comment on here?
We don't, I mean, you can ask for it, but you guys aren't,
We're not
having a
voting.
motion.
Okay, all right, I just saw this. I didn't want to.
Right.
It's on there next. Okay, right.
This is incredibly important to me. Chair, this is a role, one I don't want to play, but I would like you to play or whoever the chair is. I sent Sika an email earlier today. I am concerned with how we're spending money. Not on positions at all.
Is this
And I
in
just-
regards to a travel policy?
A travel policy and a procurement policy.
Okay,
And so I've asked now twice and we don't have one. And it puts, I think, the staff in a very awkward spot because they're doing what they, again, nothing illegal or immoral or fattening about this. It's just, they're doing what they think is right. But we don't have a policy.
we did make a request for a policy. Do you have an update as to, because I know we made the
Working on
request.
that, they've had lots of changes at BMO, so he is helping to put that policy together.
Can we do this? Can we, and not that Chris isn't great, but we have to pay Chris. I'm okay taking the county's policy. I'm okay taking the state's policy. And I said this before. Can we just get them, offer them up to the council, see which one we prefer and adopt it? We don't need a procurement and travel expert. As a state employee, you know what the rules are, right? You follow the rules. If it's the state, I don't know what the counties is. I'm very familiar with the states. I don't know what the counties is, but I guarantee you it's well thought out and reasonable, whatever that is, so that we have it, so that when I'm asked a question, did you approve something? And did it meet the policy? I can say yes, or no, I didn't approve this. And you're actually approving, or whoever the chair is approving up front, and whoever the treasurer is, so there's a check and balance, is saying, yes, it matches the policy and it got the approval of the chair.
Yeah.
That's.
I hear your request and I completely agree because I've heard this request for a travel policy more than once. I'm not opposed to looking at the county or the state's policies, but whatever, I would like Mr. Rowe, given the fact that he is our council person, to look at it and say, this is applicable to the council, because I don't know,
We're just
what's
over
applicable or
budget
not.
when it comes to expenses. I don't know.
Okay,
That's why I'm very sensitive to
Having
that dollar amount. Again, I love having him. He's a very smart attorney. I'm just thinking, is there a way that, and maybe there's a hybrid. Maybe we start with two policies, the counties and the states. Seems like those are two appropriate ones. And ask him to look at those two, I guess.
I think we can do that. I would be hesitant to just pick one and adopt it. Because I remember once I said something about the benefits package mirroring the state. And I was told, well, they're not state employees. And that resonated with me. I was like, yeah, no, you're right. They're not state employees. So this policy needs to be our policy. So I would like for us to get it. And I would ask the staff if you all can pull those two policies. But I would like for Mr. Rowe, and I have no idea how over budget we are.
We are.
Okay, but I would like for him to look at it, and I would like to request a timeline on this if we can, because it has been some time. So when do we meet again, Ms. Clay? When does this executive council meet again?
Next month, the same time, the second Monday
In April.
in April.
Okay, and all right, let me think through this, because I would like to have it in place before our next meeting, if we can. So if we could put it on the
Hold on.
agenda, all right.
Do you want it on the council agenda for Thursday?
I don't think we can.
We're not meeting this Thursday. It's the next Thursday. Okay.
Then we can. That would meet the
Yeah.
public notice.
If
Yeah,
we-
we'll notice on this Thursday.
This Thursday, then if we could have them in there and ask the council members to review them and be familiar with them, and the fact that we plan to send them to, okay, let me think through this. I want them to review them. We will ask that Mr. Rowe gives us the final iteration at our next meeting. I think we're gonna have to wait until our next April meeting. But that gives the council members an opportunity to call out
We
anything
don't
that's
have any
important to them.
travel plan.
Okay,
Just-
all right. then that's fine.
To put your minds at ease.
Okay, so there's,
I mean, it's just using
Well,
the E card. I mean, you guys use that on I get the credit card bill, so I see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. I can wait a month, 2 months. I want to remind people that this was a request that I made a while ago, and as we have on our consent agenda, which means no one is really looking at it except me, so it's my name kind of on there, and that's what it is our financial report.
Oh, the
And that's
financial
why.
on it. And I do, I look really.
Right. Wait, you-
Yeah, but-
Right, but what you're looking at is sort of a 30,000 foot view.
Okay,
The numbers that are beneath those are the ones that
Okay.
that I look with. Again, if I was, when I have been terribly concerned, I have raised it.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
So, and again, I don't think there's any question of legality or impropriety at all.
Okay.
But I would like a policy, so
And I think
Travel and
procurement, right, I completely agree.
And we have a procurement policy. I think he's speaking of a purchasing policy, not a procurement. We have.
Right, not an IT.
Okay, so purchasing policy, okay.
The
So-
P card.
We call it a P card.
P card,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool.
Purchase.
So would you all please just pull the travel policies and include the P card policy, the purchasing policy, and include those so that we can review them and be familiar with them. I will ask Mr. Rowe, sprinkle it with holy water, make sure we're comfortable, and then we can make a final decision on that during our next meeting. Are y'all comfortable with that?
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you very much. Mr. Watts, anything else?
Nothing.
You're good with that? Okay. All right, our next meeting date will be the 10th, April 10th. That's the day before my birthday, guys. On the agenda, we will definitely be covering the policy. We will have voted already on the staffing plan, so, okay. And then any other agenda items, you all will update us with that on the next meeting. Okay, perfect. Any other member comments? No. Okay, gentlemen, thank y'all so very much. All right, with that, it is 6:43 p.m.